Hi, changemakers. It's me, Berkner Boyt. I want to dig into the human side of change. I want to have real conversations with the people who are doing the messy work of leading change and not burning people out in the process. I'm going to go deep with some of the best change and integration leaders about what's working. We'll wonk out on the data, weave in the neuroscience, and work through the challenges. Welcome to the Make or Break podcast. Welcome to this Make or Break episode where I talk with Jeremy Ford from North Highland. Jeremy and I got into it. He's been doing this work a long time. I think I really appreciate what he's going to share with us about the busting the myth that AI is taking over change management. One of the key activities that he really has seen drive successful transformations of all kinds. The role that vulnerability plays in leadership and leaders demonstrating vulnerability in change. And then I personally learned a new term for people from Boston that I'm going to be using forever. So it's a great episode. Let's jump in. Hello and welcome to this episode of Make or Break. I am joined today by Jeremy Ford, who's a managing director at North Highland. Jeremy, it's fantastic to have you here. Please introduce yourself. Let us know a little bit about North Highland.
I'm super happy to be here. Love talking to like-minded folks about my favorite topics, change and transformation. Yes, I'm managing director with North Highland. I lead a practice at the firm called Acceleration, which includes most of our delivery capabilities and offerings, which does include some of our project delivery, program management, project management, but also includes our change management practitioners and capabilities, which holds a very special place in my heart. For those that might not be familiar with North Highland, a roughly 30-year legacy of change management really is part of their DNA. Recently building out capabilities, being very tech and data forward practices that we work very collaboratively with. But we really like to think of ourselves as sort of the Goldilocks in the market where, pardon the cliche, but we bring all the right ingredients, but we're not cookie cutter. And we really have wonderful, wonderful talent, amazing assets and how we work. And driving outcomes for our clients, but doing it in a very flexible, kind of meet our clients where they're at kind of way. So yeah, it's just a bit about being us. Yeah.
I love that because that's sort of the epitome of change, isn't it? Like meeting people where they are, meeting the system where it is, all of those things, and then changing it. So you've done this work for a long time, and I always love finding out from people what they do and if they have strong opinions on data and measurement. Is there something that you kind of swear by? Is there some data and measurement that you think maybe used to have high utility and doesn't anymore? What's your perspective on this? What are some of the best practices that you all are doing in terms of measurement data?
Very provocative place to start is, maybe not most would think we'd start talking about change management and behavior change with, I think many almost think about data as sort of the holy grail in this field of like how can we measure people's behaviors and people's feelings and tie that to KPIs and business outcomes. And it's not easy. So I think, to me, you really have to think about, well, what's the end in mind here? Yes, every change practitioner has a framework and a playbook, whether it's ProSci or another one or some best of breed model. But success is not just executing all the assets in a playbook. It's really what are the outcomes we're trying to drive towards at the end? And yes, how are we leveraging data in a sensible way, in a pragmatic way that better help us to drive to those outcomes and not just in a check the box kind of way. But to hone in on an answer to your question, almost always in most of the transformations that I've been a part of recently, and actually literally just got off a call about 20 minutes ago with a client about a change where it involves driving technology change to a highly decentralized end user population, very field-based, hourly workforce, end user technicians. How are we going to drive technology change to them? It's almost the perfect storm of adoption.
Yeah.
And so what we're really honing in on is the pivot point, the inflection point of, we believe, driving that change is the frontline manager, the
Mm,
supervisor, really the connection point between the enterprise why of the change and sort of corporate and technology and IT to like who's really going to be the mouthpiece of this change to our vast thousands of end user technicians. So if we hone in on that, you say, all right, if that's really important, what are some data points we can capture that will help us figure out if we're doing a good job or not? And so certainly, to the extent that we can do pulse surveys and get a pulse along the way of, okay, for that manager persona, that manager segment, can we ask them some questions around like their belief in the why and their
mm.
understanding of what this project is, why we're doing it, and the role that they have to play? You could get a baseline, whether it's weekly, monthly, whatever's appropriate, of like, that's a critical point. And if we're starting to see a decline in that sentiment, we know we're going to have some issues with adoption. So, that would just be one example, because I think there's really no one size fits all of there's going to be this one data point that always makes the most sense because every change is different. People are different. So, that is one example of trying to back into how can we use data to help us kind of power our driving towards change outcomes.
And what I love about that, Jeremy, is you were really talking about first the understanding of who a key population was, that if they weren't engaged, and then what's a specific measurement for that key population. And I also really appreciated what you said. I often refer to this as like fingerprints. Every change is a little different, every organization's a little different. And so the data, the what and the when and the how and the who, all need to be a little different each time. There isn't really, there might be some standards that you look to pulse survey, you look to different things, but you have to be really flexible in that approach, is what I was hearing.
Yeah, 100%. I've often said that change management is equal parts art and science, and the
Amen.
science part is the playbook. It's the assets, it's the tools that we use and how well we execute them. And then those are important. But the art is that element of subjectivity that comes with, again, trying to get people to feel a certain way. That doesn't come from a playbook per se. A playbook or even AI isn't going to drive people to feel trust, to have certain beliefs. And so, you really need to be thoughtful about intentional, deliberate ways to drive those feelings that lead to adoption.
Right. It's because it's not robots, it's humans. Right. And the
For now, for
complexity,
now,
it's the part that makes it so interesting and so hard.
that's right.
um, all right. So there is um, always a certain set of like adages or things that you must do or must measure or you must use this model, or what are some of those kind of conventional wisdom related to change and people that you think is BS? You
Yeah.
don't buy it.
So this might be a little, provocative, but as we're entering the age of AI, and I'm just coming fresh off of the heels of the ACMP Global Conference in Orlando, which was held in May, and it was an amazing, wonderful event and experience. But you couldn't go probably 2 minutes until someone was talking about the tsunami of AI that is
Yeah.
impacting not only business but the field of change management, and it almost felt like, and so here's maybe my hot take here a little bit, is let's pause for a minute on the AI. Yes, AI is a powerful tool and an enabler, but we can't lose sight of again, what success is, which is the humans at the center, and getting them to feel a certain way, getting them to behave in a different way. And AI on its own is not going to be able to do that. Now, we are using AI to drive acceleration and optimization in the tools that we use. But it's not just using AI for the sake of AI and checking a box and saying that we have an AI powered change management solution. We can't lose sight of how are we continuing to put humans at the center, I really enjoyed some of the sessions I attended that were still drawing upon the learnings from neuroscience and how the brain operates, and us trying to use empathy and put ourselves in the shoes of our end users. Maybe AI is a powerful tool that can help us advance in that regard. Maybe a face-to-face conversation is actually more powerful. And when is that still appropriate? So, it might feel weird to say that, my myth busting take on something that's conventional wisdom, because AI is still, yes, relatively new, but you can't, go anywhere, scroll through LinkedIn without seeing some new post about, AI taking over change management. And so I think there's a place for it, but um, I would actually argue that there's no field, perhaps more uniquely positioned, where the human will continue to be so, that human interaction is still so important than change management, and keeping that front and center.
Yeah, there is a lot to unpack there, and I think it's really interesting, Jeremy, if we think about some of the research that's coming out around that, around people can tell if something they might not be able to tell you why they can tell it's AI generated in terms of text, messaging, communication. I mean, other than it all sounds exactly the same,
Yeah.
right? But there are some other things, even when people try and kind of tweak it. And so in the midst of something where you need high trust. If you're relying on AI for the wrong things, it's really going to get people leading change in trouble.
Right. But what builds trust? Authenticity, vulnerability. Even if you prompt AI to say, "Hey, whatever you reply with, make sure it feels authentic and vulnerable." When it comes out of the human's mouth, it is still going to feel, fraudulent, I think. Yeah, certainly there's still a role to play in equipping and empowering people to be change leaders. But AI is not an easy button for that by any means.
I wonder if you could share a story, Jeremy, of, and you pick a change that, and let's, whichever you pick, right? A complex change that was not going to be easy to pull off. One that went right or one that went terribly wrong? And if you choose either one, the why. Why did it go right? And or why did it go terribly wrong? What were the misses and what were the lessons in either, the spiking the ball or the hanging the head and gosh, I wish we would have.
Yeah. Um, I could probably give both sides of that coin and examples of where almost the same dynamic went right and went wrong. At the end of the day, it's sort of ensuring that people feel seen and heard. And I've been part of change initiatives where I think the agenda and strategy and program and activities were driven at a corporate level for
Mm,
changes that were happening out in the field, in warehouses,
yeah.
distribution centers, field sales teams, where everything seemed like, with the best of intent. These, to us, this feels like the right things to do, and then launched and cascaded a change in engagement and communications plan. And surprise, surprise, it's almost like the game of telephone. Is the more down the line you get from the original intent of the message and who's sharing the message,
Yeah.
it just, the value of that gets eroded. And wouldn't you know, the change doesn't stick of using that new system or using it appropriately.
In
Conversely,
that,
yeah, go ahead.
if you had to go back, where would you how would you have integrated the folks in the warehouses, in the plants, out in the field? How would you have involved them so that the game of telephone, right, and this change plan that really didn't fit, right? It sounds like it was trying to fit a square peg in a round hole. situation because the realities were just different.
Yeah,
Um,
I think, and I believe this is one of the kind of a design, human-centered design principle of like, go and see, go to the
mm,
end user. And, sometimes there are budget constraints, logistical constraints of going out and visiting, distribution centers on the other side of the country, or you just, how can we fit it all in? But going in and living a day in their life and having real conversations with them, sitting on a shift with them, say like, hey, this is what we have planned. Like, what do you think about that?
mm.
And not only does that give you more valuable information to hone a better solution, potentially the technology solution itself, but certainly your adoption strategy, but also it engages those stakeholders earlier on so they feel like they're part of this future state world. They feel like they've been consulted with. They feel like they've been given a shot of providing some, element of autonomy in shaping that future state. And, I think one of the phrases I heard very early on in my change management schooling and training was participation fosters acceptance.
Mm.
So if you want people to be engaged, you need to go out and engage with them. You can't just lob communications at them from, across the country. So, and that doesn't necessarily require a ton of super structured planning and strategy. It's like just going out and spending time with them and showing that you care, and then sustaining that throughout the journey.
You know what I appreciate about that, and I'm gonna bust a myth that you embedded in there when you said, sometimes the budget, sometimes it might be too
Mhm.
expensive to go out. Yeah, it's way less expensive than a failed change initiative.
Of course. Yeah. If you don't like the cost of
So
change now, just wait till you see it later.
yeah, that's it. Um, what do you see as the make or break in successful uh, centering of humans in transformation and disruptive change?
um, yeah, I think it's some of the pieces I've talked about of being really authentic and engaging with them early on. Um, and to the extent that you can, maybe this draws back to another myth to bust, but oftentimes you hear they're like, oh, we need top down communication, start at the top, set the tone from the top. Um, Oftentimes if you can have more of a bottom up approach, and engage people. I mean, really at all levels, of course, but what truly makes or breaks change and will drive whether it sticks or not is out in the masses. And so, how can you scale a change program, which again could often be thousands of end users spread across dozens of sites, um, change programs that feel authentic. And again, here could be an example of where AI could be useful of engaging with people in a more user experience kind of way,
Yeah.
where the change tools of the past might have been very Microsoft Excel templates and PowerPoint decks, and change success is not dependent on how well slide 12 in this PowerPoint case for change was formatted and how beautiful the bullets are on the slide and the colors look great. Did we give people what they need when they needed it? And, again, like, hey, we drafted this, 30-page FAQ document. It has all the answers they need. Okay, well, how are they going to access it? How likely is it that they're going to hunt and peck and search for the answer to their one question on FAQ number 28? Well, what if we had an AI chatbot, that they just have one place to go and all they need to do is ask the question and it's going to give them all the answers they need. Um, so, you know, trying to leverage technology that will kind of meet the human where they're at and give them what they need at the right time.
Jeremy, I just really want to call out how in this conversation you've really demonstrated a flexibility, right? On one hand, you were debunking around AI, and then also saying, here's where AI is helpful. And I think that flexibility and that adaptability in thinking um,
Mm.
is um, is just so key in this work. And I appreciate that leadership that you're actually showing even in this conversation. Um, okay, so you took C2IQ.
Yes.
Was there anything in your skill results, so either high skills or low skills, that you were like, yeah, that tracks, or that was surprising to you?
I mean, I think, it tracked that, fortunately, I felt like you sort of had the answers to the tests ahead of time. Just, being in the field, being a practitioner, I knew what that's a spicy way to say it, but I felt like I knew what the right answers
Yeah,
to the questions were. And I know it's not a test, but like that's, I feel like I'm taking an assessment. Um, but as we know, there's a difference between knowing something and doing something.
yep,
And so I was pleased to see that for the most part, I think my scores were fairly strong, or what I would have expected to see of my knowledge of ways to behave in situations of change, et cetera. And the pieces around setting culture and psychological safety and inclusivity, though my scores were a little lower there, because being vulnerable, I think, again, there's situations where it's hard. It's hard to know the right thing to do, um, but to do them in a high stakes environment where you're, especially for those who might be in leadership positions, to show that vulnerability and to do something that might feel a little uncomfortable. Um, that I guess was my insight in some of the things that I coach others on, of inclusion and psychological safety. I'm like, hey man, like I think you set the bar pretty high, and need to maintain that.
well, and this is about skills, and skills are something that we continually work on. And I think that is, again, I just appreciate even your response to that in terms of, yeah, my scores were what I would expect. I knew the right answer,
Mm.
and I took it as a skills based, like, am I actually doing like the knowing doing gap?
Yeah.
And just this idea of, and I can keep leaning in to getting better, right? This isn't like a personality or right, it's a skill. So um, this conversation's been fantastic. I would love for people to know where they can connect with you, follow you, if you have anything interesting coming up, Jeremy, that you want us to know about, because there's more, y'all, where this came from, in terms
Yeah.
of somebody that is leading change consistently and with, just, I would say, um, generosity and just being really genuine, Jeremy. So appreciate that.
Thank you so much. That means a lot to me. I like to say that this is topics like this, I'll talk about for free. As a self-professed change and transformation nerd, this stuff kind of fires me up. Maybe I talk about it too much, even though in the household, as my wife can attest to her great dismay. So I would love to continue this conversation in whatever platform or channel. Um, yes, LinkedIn is a great spot to connect with me for sure. You can expect to hear more of some of our emerging work at North Highland, and how we're building out sort of our approach to AI organizational enablement. That, guess what? Surprise, surprise, the success of actually operationalizing the technology of AI has very little to do with the technology. It has to do with the people. And so we're kind of at the forefront of that thinking. Um, you know, Again, look us up on North Highland. Yeah, don't be shy. Reach out. Would love to, broach a conversation if anyone's in the Boston area. I'm a very proud Bostonian, and I like to say that makes me a mass hole, which is a term I'm very proud of. I take with great pride and affection. So you won't, insult me if you use that one. But yeah, it's been a
That's
pleasure.
fantastic. I can't believe I was today years old before I heard that term. That was great.
Well, there you go.
Jeremy, thank you. This was a great conversation. Y'all, give him a follow, join in conversation with him. Like all change nerds, we really will talk about this all day long. Thank you so much. We will see you at the next episode of Make or Break. Hey, you made it to the end of the episode. You are ride or die. Thank you again for joining us. If you like the podcast and want to stay connected, please hit subscribe. These are video podcasts, so join us on YouTube for the best experience of the show. You can also reach out to me on LinkedIn. I love connecting with people who are committed to human-centered change. See you on the next episode.